supers on empty hive bodies in a staggered fashion to allow airflow between each frame. A dehumidifier is drawing out the moisture as a fan circulates the warm, dry air over the honey. If we keep the combs warm before extracting, the honey flows easier and harvesting is much more efficient. The longest you'll want to dehydrate the honey is 1 week. The shortest is 2 days. You'll have to use your best judgment to determine how long to dehydrate your honey, but this only comes with experience. Our honey has been drying for several days now, so I am confident that we can extract it and get the quality that we want. Here's a good reason for drying your honey. Uncapped cells. Almost every frame will have some uncapped cells. In fact, in any super there might be as much as 1/3 of the cells uncapped. If you remember back to when we put the honey supers on the hives, we removed the 10th frame from supers with drawn-out foundation. Using only 9 frames allowed the bees to draw out the combs thicker, and thick combs are much easier to uncap. In fact, some people even think you get more honey from 9 thick frames of comb than from 10 frames. Compare the difference. This comb came from a super of 10 frames of new foundation. This is a typical extracting setup for a hobbyist. We need to follow a very specific sequence to extract the honey. First, we'll put a frame on this nail point to allow it to pivot, and then, using a heated uncapping knife, we'll slice open the cells of honey on each comb. A word of caution, the dripping wax is scalding hot. The cappings fall into a screen basket in this uncapping tank. The honey will continue to drip out of the cappings into a catch bucket. We'll place the frames of uncapped combs on the tank next to the extractor until there are enough to load. This will keep the honey dripping into the tank. This is a 4-frame extractor. Centrifugal force throws the honey out of the cells onto the tank wall. This non-reversible extractor can remove honey from only one side of the comb at a time. More advanced radial extractors can remove honey from both sides of the comb simultaneously. Sometimes a comb will break while being spun, but there is a technique to spinning that will save many of the combs. After spinning the first side gently for about 30 seconds, or until about half of the honey has been spun out of the cells, we'll reverse the frames. Now we will extract the second side completely. Then turn the frames back to the first side and spin out the remainder of the honey. When all the honey is out, we'll put the frames back in the supers and use these same combs next year. The honey in the extractor contains dead bees and bits of wax, most of which is removed as it passes through the double screens. About 2 supers of honey will fill a 5-gallon bucket. Now this looks ready to go. From the extractor, the honey is poured into a settling tank, where it must sit undisturbed for at least a week. This lets small particles of wax and air bubbles rise to the surface where we can skim them off. Air bubbles can cloud the honey and cause a scum on the top of the jars. Most commercial honey producers would heat their honey at this point to aid in the final straining and to prolong shelf life by killing yeasts that promote granulation. However, heating is not really necessary for most hobbyists. All honey will granulate, but can always be reliquefied by placing the jar in boiling water. The harvesting process yields not only honey, but plenty of beeswax. The shaved-off cappings that fell into the uncapping tank are new wax that was produced this year by the bees. And because this wax contains few contaminants to darken the final product, it is the highest quality and the most desirable of all beeswax. We let the cappings stay in the tank where they fell to allow the honey to drip out. After a couple days of draining, we'll wash the wax cappings in water to remove any remaining honey. Now the cappings are cleaned and ready to be melted. The cleaned cappings go in here. And hot water circulates in a jacket around the outside. This wax melder is electric and uses 220 volts, but there are solar wax melders which use the sun to do the heating, thereby conserving electricity. It takes about 20 minutes to melt a load of wax. As soon as it becomes liquefied, it will flow out into one of our molds. Wax needs to harden slowly or else it will crack. This wax was processed 2 days ago, so it's ready to be removed. Foreign particles will settle to the bottom of the wax cake, so we need to scrape the bottoms clean. We're going to send our wax cakes to one of our suppliers who will process them into new foundation. In exchange for our wax, he'll discount our next purchase of foundation. And that's a good deal for both of us.